I did see that if you guys joined us last week, Matt had put up on his, as one of his slides of the CCH was the today's announcement, and we've done this for a couple of days, that President-elect Biden is naming Boston Mayor Marty Walsh for his Department of Labor Secretary. Becomes important. We talked about this last week, some of the changes that I think we'll see from the DOL, and a very active DOL, what I expect. Keep in mind that Marty Walsh was a union leader, so I think that's going to play into things. And he's also been pretty vocal about trying to raise the minimum wage and about paid leave. So stay tuned on those. I think, especially now that we know what's going on with the Senate, I think there's going to be some big pushes for a lot of legislation once the Biden administration comes into play. So I just want to spend a couple of minutes. I did cover these topics somewhat last week, but I wanted to cover them again because we're getting a ton of questions still about FFCRA. As you know, FFCRA was enacted April 1st of 2020 for employers with less than 500 employees to allow for paid leave. There's 80 hours of paid sick time, and there's additional 10 weeks of expanded FMLA. These are the 6 reasons for the paid sick leave. And then the expanded FMLA is just for childcare reasons. And what we learned is that it's no longer mandated as of December 31st, 2020, but that employers can still get the tax credit if they choose voluntarily to extend FFCRA until March 31st. So what a lot of our members are asking actually is, hey, MEA, what's everybody else doing? So I want to ask you guys who are on, for those of you who were covered by FFCRA in 2020, take a minute, would you, and help us with a poll here. Are you going to extend it voluntarily in 2021? Yes, no, or you haven't made the decision yet? This will be really valuable information to other businesses in the area who are trying to make this decision. All right, great. Thank you guys so much. So it looks like we've got 52% saying yes, 16% saying no, and 32% of you saying you still don't know. So this is important for other businesses who are trying to make this decision. If you haven't decided yet, decide. You make that decision quickly because, as we all know, one of the basic tenets of HR law is consistency. So you want to treat employees consistently as you go through. So we'll include these results with the email that goes out after the webinar. Okay, but thank you guys for participating in that. So again, keep in mind, COVID's still here. Our numbers are greater than ever. So keep in mind that if you want to extend FFCRA, you can, but you also have paid sick leave laws that may apply. Philadelphia, New Jersey, for example. We also have FMLA and ADA that may apply. Kevin, did we have questions?
Just one question. For the extension of the FFCRA, you can do just the sick leave part, not the leave part, right?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that you can separate them out necessarily and still get the tax credit. That's an interesting question. I don't know that you could have the answer to that.
Okay. I mean, I would think if it's voluntary, as long as you're saying you're consistent, you can decide. But if there's anything different, we'll update people next week.
Okay.
Just
right.
Someone else, if you extend the FFCRA as the 80-hour carryover from 2020.
So if someone has already used their 80 hours under FFCRA, they don't get a new 80 hours as of January 1st. So if they've already used it, they've used it. They don't get a fresh time. FMLA, the extended sick leave time that's available, or the extended FMLA time that's available for childcare, that's really going to depend on how your FMLA works. If your FMLA reset on January 1st, check your written policy, then employees will get more time. Otherwise, no. And most employers do not do FMLA on a calendar year. Most employers do it on a rolling basis. So chances are, if you have an employee who's already taken their 12 weeks of FMLA time, they're not going to have any new time before March 31st. Okay? Because there really is a time to think about, if you haven't made a decision yet, how are you going to treat employees going forward? Because I think one of the things we're seeing right now, we're seeing a lot of workplaces with positive tests. So you really want to make a decision now. What are we going to do to keep sick employees home, and what are we going to do about flexibility? And you guys have heard me talk about this over and over and over again. Can we offer flexibility at work, flexibility around how and when work gets done, flexibility from work, leave and time off, And can we help our employees with caregiving, because a lot of schools still are not in person. And of course, the key in most cases is going to be flexibility. And then the other question that we keep getting over and over again on the hotline is around vaccination. As we know, the vaccines are being rolled out, and we're hoping that the vaccine can be more widely available by spring of 2021. We're seeing community vaccination centers being opened up. We're seeing there is some availability to sign up for a vaccination, and you'll be notified when you're eligible. But more and more employers are saying, well, can we require this? So keep in mind first, limited availability, right? You can't require something that's not available. But you can, under ADA, establish legitimate health and safety requirements that are job-related and consistent with business necessity. So what does that mean? That means if you're dealing with the public, if you're in person, you at least have an argument for mandatory vaccines. What we've seen in the past with flu shots, and this is kind of similar, right? They're generally not mandated by most employers, but in healthcare settings, they have been. So obviously, if you're a healthcare provider, you might be in a different place than other types of employers. But if your employees are still all working from home, I don't think you have a great argument that you should mandate the vaccine. Keep in mind, you always are going to have to allow for reasonable accommodation and the interactive process, either on the basis of disability under the ADA or on the basis of religion under Title VII. And it really comes down to the carrot versus stick approach, right? If you're going to require the vaccine and employees refuse, then what? You're prepared to fire people. You need to think that through. Also, the potential for legal challenges. We've seen lots of lawsuits over flu shots. I guarantee you we're going to see those challenges over the coronavirus vaccine as well. Do you want to be the test case? I think for most of you out there, the answer is no. You don't want to spend the time, energy, and money on fighting this in court. Let the big boy employers do that, right? So I tend to fall on the carrot side, right? Education. There's a lot of good stuff out there from the CDC. Get some education out there to your employees. Make sure they understand there's a lot of fear about the vaccine. People think the process was rushed. Get some good education out there to your employees to help them understand that this appears to be a very safe and effective vaccine. Cost, that's easy. I think most insurance plans are covering this. Make sure your employees know that they're not going to have to pay anything. Make vaccines as easy as possible. There might be a point where we get to vaccine clinics in the workplace, just like we have with flu shot clinics in the workplace. We might have COVID vaccine clinics as well. Hopefully that'll be rolled out. But if not, give people an hour of paid time off to go get their vaccination. We've heard talk about vaccination bonuses. Based on what I'm reading so far, yeah, it's probably legal. Some healthcare groups, for example, are saying basically as a thank you to their employees and to incent them to get the vaccination, a $500 bonus if you get it. There is some concern around that. Are we discriminating against people who can't get the vaccine for some disability reason or religious reason? Yeah, there might be some litigation around that. So I think there is some risk in doing it, but for the most part, we think that's probably something that can happen. But then also, at some point, it might come down to, if you can prove you've been vaccinated, then we're going to let you go without a mask. We're going to let you not socially distance, and the rest of you are going to have different rules. So that might be something that comes down the pike as well. Think about that. That might incent your employees to not have to wear a mask for 8 hours a day, to not have to be socially distant from their coworkers for 8 hours a day. All right. That was just quickly what I wanted to cover, because I know that those are the questions we're getting on hotline right now. Do we have any additional questions coming through, Kevin?
I think can you require to work without a mask on? So, yeah, I think we're pretty much covered at this point. Someone asked if you don't extend FFCRA, can employees apply for unemployment for the missed work time?
I mean, it depends what the situation is, and we are going to have our unemployment comp expert, Judy Snyder, on soon to talk about those issues. But for a lot of COVID-related reasons, if employees can't work, there is some availability to get unemployment comp.
Okay, I think we're good. All right, and again, this is dynamic, so each week, that's why Amy's on, and we'll kind of update as we learn more on what people are doing out there. And maybe next week we'll do a little survey about vaccines and things like that. So, all right, well, thank everybody again for joining us. Hopefully it was a good session and covered a lot today, and we'll spend a little bit more time with Amy next week. Take care, everybody.